Hello, pool players! Today I'm going to cover the most important theory any new player will learn. Understanding and utilizing this theory will take your game to the next level. The theory is called the 90-degree rule or the tangent line rule. In order to understand this theory, there are a couple terms that need to be defined. The first term is the pocket line. The pocket line is an imaginary line that grows through the center of the object ball to the center of the pocket. I frequently use my pool cue to help myself identify and visualize the pocket line. The next term that needs to be defined is the tangent line. The tangent line runs perpendicular or at a 90-degree angle to the pocket line and is located just behind the object ball. For the purpose of this drill, I have marked the tangent line with a piece of tape, but during practice or play, I will frequently use my pool cue to help myself visualize the placement of the tangent line. In this first example, I'll be hitting the cue ball with a stun shot, also called a stop shot. When a stun shot is executed correctly, there is no top spin or bottom spin on the cue ball. The cue ball slides across the felt until it makes contact with the object ball. A stun shot is achieved by hitting just below center on the cue ball with a firm stroke. I will cover drills that will help you master the stun shot in future videos. When a cue ball is hit with stun, it will deflect and stay on the path of the tangent line. You can see in the slow motion shot that the cue ball is not spinning until after it makes contact with the object ball, and the cue ball deflects along the path of the tangent line. In this next example, I will demonstrate how the path of the cue ball is altered when hitting the cue ball with topspin. This is called a follow shot. A follow shot occurs when the cue ball rolls forward on its way to hit the object ball. This is achieved by hitting the top portion of the cue ball or by hitting at center or below center of the cue ball with a softer hit. When the cue ball is hit with topspin, the cue ball will travel past the tangent line, as demonstrated in the video. If you look closely at the cue ball in this slow motion shot, you can see the cue ball rolling forward on its way to hit the object ball. It is this forward roll that carries the cue ball past the tangent line. In this next example, I will demonstrate how backspin, also called a draw shot, affects the path of the cue ball in relationship to the tangent line. A draw shot is achieved by hitting low on the cue ball so that it spins back after striking the object ball. In order to execute a draw shot, you must hit below center on the cue ball. The lower on the cue ball you hit, the more backspin you will achieve. When hitting the cue ball with backspin, the path of the cue ball will end up behind the tangent line. Notice how in this slow motion example, the backspin continues to alter the path of the cue ball even after it made contact with the object ball, keeping the cue ball above the tangent line. I will now complete a drill that demonstrates the 90-degree rule and how the cut angle affects the path of the cue ball. In the first stage of this drill, I'll be shooting each shot with topspin. If we watch each shot in slow motion, we can see that the cue ball deflects along a path that is past the tangent line. Note how the path of the cue ball goes further past the tangent line as the cut angle decreases. The next shot is straight in, but if I aim the object ball to one side of the pocket, I am able to cheat the pocket and create a cut angle on the object ball. This allows me to put topspin on the cue ball without scratching. The same shot is a scratch shot if I aim the object ball to the center of the pocket. As I continue to move the cue ball in this drill and increase the cut angle, notice how the distance the cue ball travels past the tangent line decreases. I will now continue this drill and hit the cue ball with backspin. Note how the cut angle affects the path of the cue ball in each shot. The next shot is straight on. This is how the cue ball reacts when I cheat the pocket to the left. In this shot, I'm aiming the cue ball to the center of the pocket. And in this shot, I cheated the pocket to the right. Now I'm going to review a situation where the 90-degree rule does not apply. I'm going to pocket the 9 ball while hitting the cue ball with topspin. Notice how the cue ball followed the path of the tangent line. In this shot, I'm going to hit the cue ball with backspin. Again, the cue ball follows the path of the tangent line. So anytime pocketing a ball requires a very thin cut, the cue ball will follow the path of the tangent line. Now let's see how you can apply the 90-degree rule in some real game situations. In the first example, I want to pocket the 10 ball and break up the 2 stripes on the rail. How would you shoot this shot? The 10 ball is a straight-on shot. However, I learned in the previous drill that if I cheat the pocket to the right and give the cue ball maximum topspin, I can break out the balls on the rail. In this next example, the player is shooting stripes. Since the 8 ball does not have an open pocket, the smart shot would be to break up the 8 and the 3 ball. How would you shoot this shot? The options are rather limited since the 9 ball is almost a straight-in shot. The 8 and the 3 ball are behind the tangent line, so I know I may be able to use a draw shot to break up the balls. Using what I learned in the previous drills, I will attempt to break up the 8 and the 3 ball by cheating the pocket to the right and drawing the cue ball back into the tied-up balls. In this next example, the shooter needs to pocket the 4 ball and break up the 5 and the 6 ball. How would you shoot this shot? The shooter could attempt a draw shot to get the breakout, but there's a risk of scratching. The safest shot in this situation would be to hit the cue ball with a stun shot, so the cue ball deflects along the path of the tangent line, rebounds off the rail, and breaks out the balls. In the next example, the shooter must pocket the 2 ball and break up the 3 and 5 ball on the rail. How would you shoot this shot? There are 2 primary ways to break up the 3 and the 5 ball in this situation. I do prefer one solution over the other. The tangent line is in line with the corner pocket, so a stun shot would result in a scratch. Since the 3 and the 5 ball are a short distance behind the tangent line, a draw shot is an option. However, there is a risk of scratching if you don't put enough draw on the cue ball. The second option is to hit the cue ball a half a tip above center, so the cue ball hits the rail just past the tangent line and rebounds into the tied-up balls. The last example is a little tricky. The tied-up balls are past the tangent line, but due to the cut angle, you would miss the breakout when using maximum topspin. So how would you shoot this shot? In order to get the breakout in this situation, you would play the 12 off the 11 ball for an easy breakout. And you can use the 90-degree rule to help you aim carom shots just like this. If you learned anything, please like this video and subscribe to my channel to show your support. Until next time, play hard and have fun.